Well, as I mentioned at the start of the show, we have a guest joining us today. Very exciting that he's able to join us. I'm not sure if we have him on video or phone, but in any case, David Mcintosh is joining us. And I want to just mention a little bit about him. He's been on our show before. So if you're a regular listener, you probably know who David Mcintosh is. But he is the president of the Club for Growth, which is a fabulous organization that backs conservative candidates. They back conservative candidates for the purpose of helping them push forward conservative ideas and specifically fiscal conservatism, economic conservatism. So David Mcintosh, former member of the United States Congress, represented Indiana's 2nd Congressional District in Congress from 1995 to 2001. He was part of the subcommittee he chaired the subcommittee on regulatory relief, pushed through the Congressional Review Act, which turned out to be a godsend when President Trump came along, getting rid of a lot of regulations that were passed without any sort of fairness or any support really from the because the agencies that passed those regulations didn't follow the proper procedure and made it easier for our Congress to undo those regulations. But he served in the Reagan administration as a special assistant to Attorney General Edwin Meese, special assistant to President Reagan for domestic affairs. During the first Bush administration, he served as executive director of the President's Council on Competitiveness. He is a man committed to free market capitalist ideas and policies and bringing out the notion, the understanding that those policies actually are what keep America strong, free, and actually keep our people in the strongest, best, and most robust economy we can have, helps our people. So David Mcintosh, I believe we have ready to join us. Well, there you are. Hi, David.
Great to be with you. How are you today?
I'm very well. I'm glad to see you. Glad you're here. I want to jump right in and tell our listeners, Club for Growth put out a video that is talking about what the left we are looking at today in the 2020 presidential contenders on the Democrat side, what the left really has as their goal. And just a fabulous video. I have a clip of it I want to play for all of you, and I urge you to share this with your friends. It's from Club for Growth, talking about the left's goal is control. So if we can start by playing that clip.
The left wants control.
What this requires is massive government intervention.
It does. Yeah, I have no problem saying that.
Control over education.
That's why I'm calling for universal free college and the cancellation of student loan debt.
Over banking.
Should have a non-for-profit public option for basic banking services, and we should be piloting these projects through the U.S. Postal Service or in any other number of ways.
They want to dictate how successful you can be.
We could increase the taxes that people are paying, so 70%, 80%. We've had it as high as 90%.
What car you can drive.
You're talking about zero carbon emissions, no use of fossil fuels within 12 years.
That is the goal.
How is that possible? You're talking about everybody having to drive an electric car.
It's going to require a lot of rapid change that we don't even conceive as possible right now.
Even what you eat.
We're going to be okay if the vast majority of the world goes vegetarian immediately.
And how you drink.
See, right now we're in a mode where I think we're thinking about it mostly through the perspective of guilt. From using a straw to eating a burger. Am I part of the problem? In a certain way, yes.
The goal isn't efficiency or affordability. They don't care if it doesn't add up.
I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
They prey on fear, predicting the end of the world.
And we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years.
The goal isn't safety or prosperity. They want the money.
Would you support a carbon tax? Some other candidates say they would.
Yeah, no, I would.
If we implement a carbon tax, that's an additional amount of a large amount of revenue that we can have.
And they want the power.
I'm concerned that if we don't impeach this president, he will get reelected.
Because the goal is control. The Democrat socialists won't stop until they have total power. Tell Democrats this stops now.
David Mcintosh, I must congratulate you on a stellar video that we just played most of that Club for Growth put out, and it relates to the real mission of the Democrat Party. So first, congratulations on that.
Thank you. We wanted to get that message out to everybody that what they are really after is not good things for Americans, free this and free that. What they really want is to control the economy and control how we live our lives. They started with taking control of the Democratic Party, and now they've successfully done that. 91% of the time, Democrat freshmen now vote with AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. They're voting with the socialists in the Democratic Party in Congress. And next they want the Senate and the White House, and then ultimately the Supreme Court. And so political control is their first agenda item. But then as we see in that video, they want to control what we drive as a car, what we eat, what we drink, what job we can have, literally everything about our lives. They want to control it, and they want to tax it if anybody happens to be successful in working and making money in a job. You think about that 90% of your paycheck going to the government. That's the agenda of the Democrats and the Socialist Democrats, because they want it all to be theirs, and then they'll hand it back out to people who they like and when they like. A terrible, terrible choice for America. And that is the big question in this election. Will they go forward with their agenda, gain more control in government, or will we have the electorate realize we stand for freedom in America? We stand for individual opportunity. We stand for people making their own way in their lives, making choices about what's best for them and for their family and their children, not the government. And that's the fundamental choice that we wanted to present to the American people for this election, because we think that's the consequence. If somebody might not like Donald Trump and say, oh, I'm going to vote for the Democrats this time, what they're really voting for are these socialists who will then take over everything in their life, take over their job, take over their savings for their programs. And that message has to get out there to the country.
That is so well said. David Mcintosh does a great summary, exactly what they're up to. You know what I find so troubling is when AOC was first elected, shockingly, in her first term, she seems to have taken Washington by storm. But when she was elected, many people said, well, yeah, she's a little out there. She's a little extreme. The Green New Deal is kind of crazy. But this isn't really today's Democrat Party. I mean, this is, she's an extremist, and no one's really going to go along with her. And the same thing with Bernie Sanders. He proposes things that used to be pretty far afield from the core Democrat Party platform. But no one, now you're in Washington, maybe you can correct me, no one within the Democratic establishment ever says AOC's out of line, she's too extreme, Bernie Sanders is too extreme, we don't want to become Democrat socialists. By their silence, I would say, the Democrat leadership is agreeing if this is where the country goes, that's fine with them. What's your take on that?
Totally. I think they're actually terrified of AOC and the socialists. When 92% of the time they're voting identically with her, they're not making a difference either. And you see this on the stage. We'll see it tonight in Iowa. The leftists, Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, and I think Steyer, are going to control the agenda. Yes. And nobody else is going to stand up and say, this is crazy. And just look recently, impeachment. They rushed to impeach Trump because they can't stand him. And the left kept saying, we have to impeach him now, just because he's Donald Trump. And now they're totally embarrassed and can't carry that argument to the American people on an issue that we don't get involved in the Club for Growth, but the recent strike in Iran, again, taking out this terrorist. I'm sitting back saying, are you guys really defending the terrorist just because it's Donald Trump that eliminated him as a threat to America? And I think nonpartisan, just average folks in America are going to look at that and say, that's crazy. I get it. They're emotional. They don't like Donald Trump. They don't like what they see going on, but they're just crazy in some of the things that they're proposing.
They are. And I tell you something else I think happens in the mindset of a lot of Americans, which is, our country's been around a long time. We've managed to still, for the most part, be the representative of freedom, the bastion of freedom of the world, really the example to the world of how you can have a country where we, the people, we have a democratic republic. We have held on to our freedom. We've held on to, we just have a soaring economy, a free market economy. And people listen to Bernie and others, and they think even if they win, even if Bernie Sanders wins, nothing bad can really happen to America. We'll never really go down the path of Venezuela. We'll never really go down the path of Cuba. It can't happen here. But I think, and I'd love to hear your reaction, we most definitely could, if we got a Bernie Sanders as president and ultimately Democrat control over the House and the Senate, we could go down that path. Is that far-fetched to you?
No, I totally agree with you, Debbie. Let me tell you a story I heard. I haven't met the two young people that came from Venezuela, but they're out on the circuit speaking to Americans about this. And they're warning, they're saying it's not just the real kind of communist thugs who've taken over in the end. It started 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where first they gave away free college to everybody. Then they had free Medicare for everybody. And the oil that they were producing paid for all that. Then the oil prices went down and they couldn't pay for it. And so you had revolution, and that's when you got Venezuela. The whole country fell apart. You got the communists who just drove it into the ground. And so when people say, hey, this is a choice about the future of the country, whether we want to continue to be America, the land of the free and the brave and strong country that has stood for all of the values we hold dear, it's a slippery slope, but it happened in Venezuela. They started with the very plans that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are talking about. Free college. By the way, your video earlier tells me when they want to give away free education, what they really want is re-education. You know, that's their agenda. We'll make it free, but we're going to make you all go to it, and as long as we put you in the gulag. And they want free Medicare for all. That's how it happened in Venezuela. And then eventually, when the country couldn't pay for it, the real bad dictators and thugs took over, and they lost all their freedom.
Exactly what happened. And actually, there is one set of two young men here in America from Venezuela who are trying to ring the alarm bell in America and wake America up. They were on my show 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they were practically interrupting each other. They wanted to make sure they could.
Great.
All these points they're saying, my goodness, you know, these arguments, they sound so good. And to that young man who's, I guess, soon to be a former Bernie Sanders campaign guy, but he is rabidly excited about the idea that we're going to force this agenda and America's going to do it. And everyone who doesn't agree with this radical agenda is going off re-education camps. And these young men from Venezuela were so, you're saying, they're caught up in the idea. We've, been there, done this. We've seen this. These very arguments about your healthcare should be free and your housing should be free and your education should be free. And the only reason you don't have it is those mean rich people who won't share with you. This is how that young guy you were listening to got around to saying, well, the billionaires need to be sent off to the gulags and pound rocks for 12 hours a day. It's just breathtaking that we have to have this conversation in America, given the world history. And I don't know. I mean, that Bernie Sanders guy, I mentioned at the end of my first 5. I don't know if anyone on the debate stage tonight will ask Bernie about that. Is this guy speak for you? I hope they will. I hope some candidate or perhaps one of the questioners will ask that.
Maybe somebody will turn to Tom Steyer and say, hey, you're a billionaire. What do you think of Bernie's people saying you should go to a re-education camp?
Yeah, that would be a good question. Yes, that would be a great question. Okay, I want to turn, I know you have limited time, and I'm so grateful again. David Mcintosh, Club for Growth. I want to talk a little bit about the Trump economy. And just because it is just kind of an amazing thing that we Americans seem to have a very serious and close election coming up in November of this year between President Trump, the re-election of President Trump, or any of the leftists now running for president, the Democrat ticket. And you've been doing a lot of, I know, media coverage about the Trump economy. Can you just run through your top notions, your top measures of how well the economy is doing under President Trump, which, should be clear, is under free market economics?
That's right. It's the tax cuts that he put through, the deregulation that you mentioned, using the Congressional Review Act, and really the drive to unleash the ingenuity and the creativity and the hard work of the American people. What we're getting from that is the lowest unemployment in 50 years. People, if you want a job today, you can find a job and get a job here. Employers are begging people to come to work for them for good money. Wages and salaries are increasing for the first time in a real way, like 2 or 3% a year above inflation. And we're seeing record new jobs creation. Just the last month, another 140,000. And that's on top of 2 years where it's averaged more like 180 to 200,000 a month. That's a phenomenal economic recovery for America. And it's not at the high end. It's all across our country, all across the economy. Everybody who is engaged in working and wants to be in the economy is benefiting from it. People are able now to get off of welfare and have a better deal getting a job at the entry level in America. All of that is because of President Trump sticking with free market, pro-growth economic program that he started the first day he was in office. So that's going to be the other huge contrast in this election. Are people willing to throw that all away and risk it with these, grandiose ideas that we know could bankrupt the country and send us into a tailspin?
Absolutely, they could. Two last points on the Trump economy. One is that I love the measures continue to come out showing that not just across the board, wonderful employment numbers, but even for African Americans and for women and for other minorities, the unemployment rate continues, the employment rate continues to go up, unemployment go down, meaning even people who are normally described as lagging behind our economy's performance or not always receiving the benefits of a booming economy are receiving those benefits, which makes it kind of amazing that the argument often on the American left is that there's all sorts of racism on our side. I would say if you're creating an economy that is actually blessing families of all backgrounds, you're doing great things. And I actually think it's going to the Democrat argument and really help President Trump for many Americans to say, why would I go back to voting for many Black Americans? Why would I go back to voting for Democrat policies that really always hurt the economy when I can have the Trump economy ongoing the next 4 years? Any thoughts on the racial aspect of the unemployment numbers?
Totally a key value. And we saw that last year in an election in Florida, where Ron DeSantis took that message. He added to it, I'm going to have school choice so that your children can get the same good education that people that live in the suburbs get. And he received a huge disproportionate share of Black votes. I don't think he got the majority yet, but he was running against a Black socialist, basically a guy who was committed to the AOC agenda. And the Black community said, no, we get it. We're much better off. Yep. We may not be Republicans, but we're much better off when they create jobs and our men and our women go to work and our families are able to enjoy life and progress and get out of the ghetto. That, people assume that voters are ignorant and kind of sheep that just follow the media. They're not. They're smart. They understand what matters. And I think President Trump can make an argument directly to those folks. Hey, I'm with you. I'm going to make sure your life is better off. And I think that'll be a success for him in the next election.
I sure do. One last point on the economy, and then I know we need to let you go. But, as I will confess, as I have my listeners before, in my past, all the way college and through law school, I voted Democrat, kind of just because I thought that's what you do if you care about poor people. And then I, became hardworking, working long hours, and began actually diving into politics and thinking about it myself, and became a very firm conservative Republican for many decades. But I'm getting at the point that you hear many people say about the why they stay with the Democrat Party is because they really care about people more than they care about tax rates and unemployment rates. They care about people. But tax rates and unemployment rates tie directly to human happiness, to human freedom, to dignity. The idea that you have more and more Americans previously on welfare, because the welfare numbers have gone way down under President Trump, formerly on welfare, now supporting themselves, now self-reliant, now participating in the American dream. Economic issues like taxes and unemployment are actually human issues. They're human happiness, human dignity, human sense of worth and self-reliance, and a sense of of participation, of belonging, and joining in our American dream. So I'd love to have any response to that as we close out our happy interview today.
Debbie, you said it beautifully. I'm not sure I could say it any better. I'll just share with you a story. When I was in Congress, a young man who's a young doctor, a minority who'd grown up in the ghetto, came up to me and he said, you know, I've not really been a Republican before, but you really care about people. You care about my people. And he went on to say, I think welfare is the modern form of slavery. It's keeping my family and my folks in the ghetto instead of giving them that hope and that opportunity to have a great life that everybody else enjoys. So he got it. And we as Republicans need to spread that message. We care about free markets. We care about good economy. We care about that because we care about people. That everything in our country, our economy, our society is people. And we want to see them prosper and benefit and pursue their dreams and have a great life. The founders called it the pursuit of happiness. And that's what we want within the pursuit of government.
David Mcintosh, thank you so very much for joining me today. I want to commend our listeners, first of all, your website, Club for Growth, but also your organization backs, you actually thoroughly vet candidates for Congress and the Senate and back people who are going to stand for the principles you believe in. And actually, if you ever want to check out a candidate, if you're listening in your state to some candidate speak, and there are several people in the race, go to Club for Growth, read who they're endorsing, why they're endorsing them. It's a brilliant thing you do. I love that. So your website again, clubforgrowth.org,
clubforgrowth.org.
Okay.
And come,
great
you
website.
can sign up for free to get all the information, and we'd love to have you.
David Mcintosh, thank you so much for joining me.
Wonderful, Debbie. Have a great day.
You too, sir. Thank you so much. Okay, folks, I'm telling you, that is a great website, and it really is filled with information. And also, I mean, I actually go look at it because you might imagine, I get contacted by candidates all across the country all the time, you know, look for my endorsement, asking me to endorse them. And Club for Growth is one place I will go look, because their willingness to take the time to thoroughly vet candidates, to understand their viewpoints, to get some sense of, if these people go to Washington to represent their people, their constituency, will they stand with these ideas they believe in or not? They're just a great resource. And as you heard, David Mcintosh, thoroughly committed to the idea of a prosperous economy that blesses everyone.